The mission started, and they was downriver. This was just a small town during that time. There wasn't even a couple thousand people when we lived here. It was very, very small. This is block 1A of the entire city. The city started where you have the gasoline tanks over here. That's a petroleum company. That's where the whole city started. And there was just a few little Indian huts there, and they called it Pucallpa, which means red clay. And then after they got the road opened up in the late 30s and 40s, it grew and grew and grew, and now that's up over 400,000. But during the terrorist time, then everybody came on out. And this was kind of like a refuge for people that got off the river. During that time, in the late 50s, early 60s, the mission decided to have a place for the Indians. It was called South American Indian Mission. And so because of that, they needed to take care of the Indians. The Indians were not considered to have, and I'm saying the Indians, that'd be the indigenous peoples, they were not considered to have a soul. So they didn't have schools, they didn't have any of that stuff for them. And so when the missionaries came, they went out to the villages, and like I grew up out in the village, then they would be in charge of the clinic, they would be in charge of the church, they'd be in charge of teaching school. So mom would have the clinic in the morning, dad would do the school in the morning, in the afternoon they'd do the school, dad would teach the older ones at night, and everybody's in charge of the villages that close by or the one they lived in. And we would stay out there for 5 years, then go back to the States for a year and come back. And that's how all the work with indigenous groups started. And because of that, they needed a base to send out supplies, medicines, school books, the whole works. That's what the Indian Center became. And so when Dad started that, they bought this property here and this one over here. And this, right literally out of that little room over there is where all the mail used to go out. Once a month, maybe once every 2 months or 3 months, all the mail would get sent out. And they would send it out of there. And one family or one single lady would stay here and run it. And in this room, they had that was like the radio room, and they would call at 7 o'clock every morning, call every station, and say, "Is anybody sick? Is anybody dying? Do you need anything? What can we pray for?" And they would go station to station and talk around. But now all the missionaries, no one lives out in the Indian villages anymore. They've all moved into town. It's a lot more comfortable. You got air conditioning, nice toilets. Anyway, so that's the change. And then consequently, so this became like a refuge for the Indians. When they would come into town, they were not allowed to go to a hotel. To this day, many restaurants won't let them come and eat in the restaurant. So little by little, like even when we take our students, in November we take everybody out to a nice restaurant and they have a meal. And for most of them, that's the first time they've ever sat down at a restaurant and had somebody serve them. Ones like Robert, when he was 12 años, saliste? He left home when he was 12 years old to finish high school, because then in 1981, the government, 1982, the government said, they made a rule that said the Indians have a soul, so they deserve to have education. So little by little, education started, and but they didn't have high school. So Robert, his dad says, "You get on out there, go work, and go to school." He'd go to school in the morning, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he'd go work in the chicken place, get out about midnight or 1 in the morning, and then again at 8 back to school. And that's how he got his secondary education. So some of them did that, many of them haven't. Now we have secondary schools in the different villages. This belongs to the Shipibo Church Association called Ayesh. There's probably 140 or 160 villages in the Shipibos, over 40,000. And we have about between 80 and 90 churches among those Shipibos. And so that's what all this is for. When they come off the river, they come and they stay here. They pay a couple soles a night for their family. They have running water. They have a safe place. We lock the gates at 10 o'clock at night, and they don't get stolen from. They don't get beat up. They couldn't stay anywhere else. So that's what all this is about. Then from there sprung the Bible Institute, which we started in 1991. So we're on our 21st year now, the Bible Institute. So that's what all that's about. Just like, sorry, it's a little long there.
Oh no, that's good.
Get going now. This was the original chapel that was built in 1960, and then it's been redone now. Now the single guys stay up there. Down below we have the administrator that runs the place. He's kind of like the watchman. And then we have a guy that helps him. We have a full-time pastor here. We have the president. Robert lives over here. Like I said, he's the director of the Bible Institute. You'll be meeting the president of the Church Association and a lot of the other guys too. Okay? Kitchen, a clinic down below. This is our soccer field. It gets beat on a lot, played on a lot. And then Memorial Presbyterian Church helped us put all this together. The city sewer is below us. It goes right here. This is an opening. It's 2 meters square. That whole city sewer comes down here, dumps into the river, and I'm down. So we have a lot of fill. We had to fill this all up. But this is just one of the pieces of property that we were able to obtain. We have 5 pieces of property. Here, we're going up to the Bible Institute. We kind of mixed it with